Good morning. I'm Pete Najarian. This is the Take 2022. Yes, we started off the new year, but we closed off the last year with a little bit of a whimper, quite honestly. Obviously, volumes are going to come down. That's normal. But we had such a great Santa Claus rally that was going, and then we started to fizzle just a little bit. We continued on, and then on Friday, the 31st, unusual day, it felt like, and volumes were definitely low, but we also watched the Dow go down a little bit, down about 60 points, NASDAQ off nearly 100 points. So like I say, a little bit of a fizzle, but the Santa Claus rally certainly, for the most part, intact. And volatility, the final couple of weeks of 2021, we went from, call it close to a 23 level, and by the time we finished up, we'd gotten a little lower than this, but we finished about 17. Gives you a little bit of a backdrop of 2021. I'll tell you what, the volumes I think are very important to always focus on. We talk about it each and every day, but how about this? Let's just show you a few examples. We drifted a little bit lower. I've been talking about that in the final couple of weeks of trading and averaged about 28 million per day. Now let's put that in perspective. That's a huge number. You go back down 2019, we were averaging about, as a matter of fact, you go back to 2018, traded close to 20 million contracts, 2019, close to 20 million contracts, sort of in that 19 to 20 million range. 2020, we had that big move, obviously. We had everybody trading from home and everybody, so much more activity in the markets themselves. 2020 averaged about 29 million contracts per day. Well, when I look at what December looked like, well, like I say, the final 2 weeks, $28 million contracts per day. We were averaging for the month still, despite that, 39 million contracts per day. As a matter of fact, our year-to-date average was 39.5 million contracts per day. So just to keep that in perspective, just look at that acceleration in growth. We had it in 2020, we had it in 21, and obviously 2022, we're just an open book, but it seems like access and volumes, I'll tell you what, if the starting of today is any influence on what we're going to look like for volumes for the rest of the year, going to be big. We've got some monstrous trades to talk about in just a second. So sectors on Friday that were moving things around a little bit. Consumer staples, definitely the leader. What was leading that? Tesla. That was up about 0.75%, but materials also up about 0.5%. But you look over and you look at technology, you look at some of the communication services area, you can see where some of that downside was coming from. As a matter of fact, what was pulling things down, at least to some degree, were names like Peloton, Zoom, Facebook, CrowdStrike, those kind of names, those Chinese names as well, PDD and NetEase. Cruise ships also under a little bit of pressure. Now, not everything was going down, even though the markets, the broader side of things in the indices were down. We had some strength as well. You had Tractor Supply actually moving around pretty nicely. Mohawk had a very nice close into 2021. Ulta did as well. Walmart, Costco, Home Depot, you get the idea. Pretty nice close, but still finished in the red. So this morning, we come in, start of a new year. Everybody kind of brushing things off after the weekend and the football and New Year's Eve and all the rest of that stuff. You take a look, markets look pretty decent. We are up 100 plus points on the Dow, close to about 60 points on the NASDAQ. Things are looking pretty good. Very quickly, we started to accelerate a little bit on the NASDAQ, pulling back a little bit on the Dow. Next thing you know, bang, we hear some of these numbers and suddenly we dropped right into the red, just right out of the gate practically. We're now in the red. But flipped around very rapidly, and in the next 40, 45 minutes or so, we have ourselves sitting pretty good. Last I looked, we were up about 100 on both the NASDAQ and the Dow. Obviously, things are moving very rapidly, and we're going to see some shifts throughout the day. That's no different than any other day. So early on, what were some of the names that really did stand out? Electric vehicles. This is something that I was talking about towards the end of the year, talking about with all of the talk with EVs, you got to start focusing on some of the exterior pieces of that as well. That's not where this is going, though, because it's right there at those EVs. You take a look at NIO, very, very solid deliveries. That was a stock that was up early. Li Auto, another one that was up nice and strong, but it's Tesla that everybody's talking about, everybody's looking at. The deliveries there and the big spike up about 100 points or very close to 100 points. McDonald's with a little bit of an upgrade. So you can see sort of the trend that's going on there. I still look at a lot of what the outside of the electric vehicles, and I'm talking about copper and some of those areas as well that I think will be very, very interesting to watch as we get deep into 2022. We'll see. Crude. That's another one of those things that's everybody's been talking about, a big mover. Crude trading right around that 75 level, early at 74 and a half, started pushing up over 75. With that, we watched energy as one of the areas of the marketplace that made a pretty nice move. It was already up, call it a little over 1%. Last I looked, it was up nearly 2.5% early on. So energy standing out. Volatility, by the way, I'm looking at volatility. We were in the 16, 17 category, actually 17s rather, and then we started to push up towards 18 with some of that nervousness with the red. We'll see. It looks like volatility is going to be somewhere, at least today. We're probably looking at a day that's going to be fairly consistent outside of any dramatic moves. We might see volatility somewhere between, call it 17 and 18 and a half. That would be what I'd be looking forward throughout the rest of the trading session. The 10-year, very interesting to see that as it's moved up 159, 16. That's one of those areas of the marketplace, of course, so you're going to see the effects with the financials themselves. That was up about 1% early. They started to move a little bit faster to the upside and up about close to 1.5% with the financials. You got technology, you got semiconductors. Semiconductors up 2% out of the gate, and they've been very, very strong. So what are some of those names? Tesla rocking early, up about 8.5%, at least in the early going. And take a look at these semiconductors, everything from NVIDIA to AMD to Micron to Marvell. You go through the entire list. It's unbelievable. NXPI, all very, very strong. Cruise ship strong as well after a little bit of a bounce back from Friday. You look at CCL, you look at like a Royal Caribbean, those names having a pretty decent start to the day, along with the airlines as well, American and Delta and all the biggies moving to the upside. Financials, early on, the leader of the Dow, Goldman Sachs. And why is that? Well, take a look at that 10-year. We talk about this all the time. JP Morgan, Goldman Sachs, a lot of the different financials with the nice move to the upside. We got some unusual in one of those financials as well. A little bit of weakness in Moderna, a little bit of weakness in Pfizer. I'm talking about the healthcare names specifically do stand out as you're looking at what's in the red and what's in the green. Certainly, you look at a lot of the healthcare names and you'll see that Lilly, Vertex, Abbott Labs, all these names having a little bit of a problem today, and the Chinese names flipping around and not trading very well, at least in the early going. We'll see if that changes as well. So let's jump into some unusual to start off the year. Some big, big trades, man. I'll tell you what, number one, Tesla. How about this one? Now, stock was trading around 1162, 21,000 of the January 7th, just like last year and the year before, very, very short term. That seems to be the theme, continues to be the theme. These expire on Friday, the January 7th, 1,200 calls, 21,000 of those bought, somewhere between $16 all the way up to close to $23. So very, very active trade there. That's a monstrous trade dollar-wise as well. If you go through the math of that, it's a big trade that we're talking about there. How about Bank of America? Now, there are other names that I could have hit, but what I try to do a lot of the time, folks, is give you names that you are familiar with, and I look at the dollar amounts, and sometimes, you know, they become very, very difficult for all of us. And Tesla is obviously one of those because of the extreme price and all the rest of the things. Obviously, those premiums for those options, that's a lot of money. I understand that. So Bank of America is number two. A lot of different other names that are hitting out there, but Bank of America, I just talked about financials, talk about the 10-year. How about Bank of America trading just underneath $46 a share, $45.87? 4,200 of the January 14th. Wow, they're going all the way out 2 weeks. So a little bit of an extension, at least from the week out with Tesla. The 47 calls getting bought, 4,200 of those, 21 cents up to about 32 cents in Bank of America. That's another nice trade to see. Not a huge dollar amount trade because obviously the dollar amount of these options, a lot less, and the volume down to 4,200. We are seeing some monstrous trades very early on this first hour of trading. So if you don't understand it, you need to get educated. The derivatives markets, I talked about those volumes. Always keep that in mind. This isn't a plug. This is, you can go anywhere for your education. I don't care where you go, but I think you should have the education, at least to some degree, of the derivatives markets to have a better understanding of what's going on in the option markets as this continues to be the area of growth. You heard me talk about 2018 all the way up through 2021. I'm telling you, the way we're starting off 2022, you really do want to know a little bit about the leverage and a lot of the different elements and how you can actually maneuver around in a little bit different way, and the options give you that. But it comes with a little bit of a cost. The cost being it's got to be in that time frame. So there's a lot of different elements that go into this whole thing. The Greeks and all of that in terms of pricing, that's something that's very, very important. Hopefully you will read books, you'll find some of the education wherever you find it. But I can tell you that at Market Rebellion, we've got a great educational team as well. Folks, have a great day of trading. I'll see you tomorrow.